I try and say this to as many young people as I possibly can. You know, if you travel, your worldview is challenged, and it makes you realize there's more than one way of looking at the world, and it just makes you a more tolerant person. And I think that's so important in an increasingly polarized world. And we also, you know, we really contribute to the economy of where we are operating. We create jobs. We give people an opportunity to keep culture alive so that they can continue to tell their story to interested visitors. And that is so, so important.
Marhaba, I'm Janan Farhat.
And I'm Derek Zeno from the Al Khaimah Foundation.
Welcome to C-Suite Talks, a podcast about what it really means to lead.
We're talking to the people behind the titles to hear their stories, lessons, and a few surprises along the way.
Because leadership is more than just the corner office. It's personal.
Welcome back to C-Suite Talks. Today, we're joined by Phillipa Harrison, Chief Executive Officer of Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority, or RACTDA for short. Phillipa, it's great to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and it's great to be here. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much for being with us on the podcast. It's a real pleasure. Phillipa, one of the things that makes your story unique is that you've spent your career helping places become a part of people's imagination. You led Tourism Australia as managing director after years working across international markets, distribution, partnerships, and destination marketing. Now, you're bringing that experience to Ras Al Khaimah at a major moment for the Emirate. RACTDA is working towards an ambitious 2030 vision, growing visitor numbers, expanding hospitality, strengthening global awareness, and doing it in a way that creates long-term value for residents, investors, and visitors. So this is not just a conversation about tourism. It's a conversation about identity, leadership, growth, and how a destination earns a place in the world. Before we get started, I want to begin with the thread that connects your past work to this new chapter. You've helped position Australia as one of the world's most coveted travel destinations. And now you're helping tell the story of Ras Al Khaimah. What was it about this emirate that made you want to take on that challenge again?
That's a very good question to start with, Derek. Previously I was running tourism nationally for Australia, and it was honestly the privilege and honour of my life to market and represent my own country. You know, I was well known, I was comfortable, I was well respected, so why make a change? And the reason was, I've been looking at this part of the world for a long time. I've been looking at the development, the ambition, the long-term outlook and planning of leadership. And if you've been in tourism your whole life like I have, it's a very, very exciting time in the Middle East. And so when the phone call came, I picked it up, and I need to be honest with you and say I had never heard of this beautiful emirate, Ras Al Khaimah, before, and what I discovered was a beautiful place, stunning natural beauty, an authentic story to tell, 7,000 years of history.
Right.
A place that was a regional gem, but relatively unknown globally.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I want to be part of the growth story of this place. And so here I am.
Amazing. It's a lovely way to frame it because Ras Al Khaimah has such a distinct landscape. It's not just trying to copy anywhere else. So I love that you pointed that out as well. All right, let's go ahead and start our 15-minute conversation.
Okay.
Could you walk us through your typical morning from when you wake up to how you prepare yourself for the day ahead?
Sure. So my mornings are very firmly about personal time. So I've always been a very busy career mum, and so I always prioritized my girls in the morning, getting them ready for school, spending some time talking to them about their day, and I just found that very, very precious time. As I've got my time back, as they've been growing up, that time has more come back to me. And so that time is now for me and for getting a bit of exercise in, because I've realised that if I don't get exercise in the morning, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I also find that that is a time where you can really do some clear thinking. So while you're walking the dog or while you're, lifting weights, you can really spend some time thinking about the day ahead in a way that isn't rushed. And, and so I always say that it's important to spend time thinking in quadrant 2 on issues that are important, but they're not urgent. Because as soon as you get to the office, you're dealing with important, urgent things all day. So
Right.
having some time to really think about that stuff that's really important for the long term but not urgent today, that is the time that I do it, in those mornings where I have a little bit of time to myself, and it really gets me ready for the day, not only the day ahead but the months and years ahead as well.
Yeah, a bit of me time before you get started with everything
That's
else.
right.
And by what time do you get to the office?
So I get to the office sort of between 8 and 9 because, I do prioritise my family time in the morning, and then, I work until I need to into the sort of late afternoon, evening as well.
And are you a tea or coffee person?
Well, both. So
I like that.
I am so lucky to say that my husband brings me a cup of tea in bed every morning, and I love
that's
starting.
really sweet.
I love starting with a cup of tea, but then I really enjoy a nice strong coffee to get the blood flowing
Nice.
before the day starts.
I like that. I'm also a tea and coffee person, by the way. I say both.
Yes.
When someone asks me. All right, moving from your mornings to your career, you've transitioned from sales and product roles to leading Tourism Australia, and now RAC TDA. Was there a moment early on where you knew destination marketing was where you were meant to be?
I don't think anyone grows up thinking I'm going to be in the tourism industry, as I didn't. I just started out as my dad had a job where we were posted all around the world. So I lived in New Delhi and Paris and all over the world. And I think, travel sort of got into my veins somehow. And so, I somehow fashioned a career in tourism. And I've got to say, all of the jobs that I've done leading up to this role have helped me now. They're part of the ecosystem. I understand, how hotels work, because I've worked in hotels. I've worked for tour operators. I've also worked in distribution in e-commerce, for retail travel, for wholesalers. So I have a really good understanding of how a destination works, what makes it successful, and I think that's an important ingredient to destination marketing. But, I did think about at some point changing careers, because this industry seems almost too much fun. It doesn't seem like it can be real. I went back to university about 20 years ago and did an MBA because I thought I'd have to have a proper career in finance or in management consulting. And what that made me realize was that, tourism was my place. This was my industry. These people were my tribe, and I was just going to take my career in tourism as far as I possibly could. So here I am.
Yeah, no, we're so glad you stuck to tourism, because we're so happy to have you in Ras Al Khaimah leading all of this.
And tourism can be such a force for good as well, and it is an important career. And I try and say this to as many young people as I possibly can. If you travel, your worldview is challenged, and it makes you realize there's more than one way of looking at the world, and it just makes you a more tolerant person, and I think that's so important in an increasingly polarized world.
Yeah.
And we also, we really contribute to the economy of where we are operating.
Yeah.
We create jobs. We give people an opportunity to keep culture alive so that they can continue to tell their story to interested visitors, and that is so important.
Yeah. I love the honesty in your answer, because sometimes when you look back is when you realize that, the path made sense. Because like you mentioned, you don't wake up one morning and think, I'm going to be in tourism.
Right.
I'm going to do this
right.
when I grow up. So I really like the honesty.
You zigzag a little to get into tourism.
Exactly,
but I've got to say, it's a great...
It's not the most conventional job that people think about growing up, right? It's usually doctor, engineer, or something along that line. But it's really nice. I love the honesty in your answer. And that brings me to a leadership question. What do you think is the most underrated skill that has helped you grow as a leader across such different markets and cultures?
This one is so easy for me, and it's a subject that I'm really, really passionate about. And that is the concept of emotional intelligence. And the good thing is it's a skill that you can learn. It's not necessarily an innate thing. Something people are better at it than others, but it is so, so important because IQ is important as a leader, but EQ is what gets you all the way and really makes you an effective leader.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know what emotional intelligence is, I would encourage anyone listening to this to read up on it. It is such an undervalued skill. It's about regulating yourself and your emotions, understanding the impact that they have on others, but also being attuned to the way that people around you are feeling. And it is the way that you get the best out of people. And you know, most communication is nonverbal, as you know. So if you're attuned to the way people are feeling, how to moderate and how to motivate them, then you're going to be much, much more effective in your role.
No, I love that response. Again, I feel like this is one of my favorite questions to ask on the podcast, just because every leader has a very different perspective on this. And for you, I think it's so relevant because in tourism you have to interact with very different audiences.
Yes.
I think, and it's emotional intelligence is very, very important because I think at the heart of tourism, it's people.
That's right. We are a relationships-based industry, but we also have to understand what makes multiple cultures and markets tick, what is going to drive them. The thing that drives a Russian visitor to Ras Al Khaimah is going to be quite different to what drives, say, an Indian visitor to Ras Al Khaimah. So you need to understand that and work with partners to really succeed in that endeavor.
Yeah. No, thank you. We've covered leadership, growth, and the bigger picture. Now, let's get to know you a little better.
Okay.
Welcome to our Wheel of Questions, a lighter segment where the wheel chooses the direction. So, Philippa, would you mind doing the honors?
My pleasure.
All right. So, Philippa, if you weren't leading RAC TDA, what do you think you would be doing instead?
Okay. Definitely developing properties. I have an endless appetite for home design.
That's interesting. Okay. Wow. Have you done anything like a formal education in it, or like it's something that
actually the one time that I left tourism, that I was lured out of my industry, was to go and work for a property developer in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay. I mean, I can see that there is a creative side to that as well.
Yeah.
All right. Can you give the wheel another spin? Yes. This is one that I really like asking again. Do you take breaks? And what does rest actually look like for you?
I absolutely take breaks. I think everybody should. I think you're a better leader if you are rested.
Yeah.
So for me, short-term walking, I find it like meditation. I think it's, I've mentioned clear thinking, and I think walking does that for you. But I also prioritize a week at a wellness retreat every single year, and I just come out refreshed and re-energized. I think everybody should do that.
Wow, that's really great, because we've been in conversation with many leaders, but some of the leaders have always told us that it's sometimes hard for them to take breaks. So the fact that you're able to prioritize that as well is so important, and I really think that's great that you do that.
You schedule it in and you manage expectations.
Yeah, no, for sure. Can we have another spin? Who outside the tourism or business world do you admire the most?
I don't think there's any particular person that I think, right. But I, at the moment, I'm really liking what I hear from Mark Carney, who is the PM of Canada.
Okay.
I think he is a rational voice in a fairly irrational political world at the moment. So I like what he has to say, and I've got to say he has good emotional intelligence, I'm sure of it.
What part of his example do you find most useful in your own leadership?
I think it's the honesty and the just being a calm voice when things are heightened. I really like that, and I really appreciate that in somebody who can just take the energy and the tension out of a situation by just being calm.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Okay. Can you give another spin if you don't mind? What's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
It sounds a bit trite, but it's challenge yourself and don't stay comfortable. I think people should say yes more often to things that terrify them, and some really good things come out of that. And I think it's particularly important for women.
Yeah.
There are studies that say if a man knows 30% of a job, he'll go, right, I can do that and jump in, and good on him.
Right.
A woman typically needs to know 99% of it before she'll put a hand up. And there's been several studies over the years. So,
That's
I'm
really
it's true. And so I'm very keen that people always challenge themselves and always do things that make them just a little bit uncomfortable. And that's how you really sort of progress, particularly from a career point of view.
Yeah. No, that feels very relevant to your journey as well. You have taken on big roles at very big moments.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like even Ras Al Khaimah, when you got the call, I'm sure it was something that's new territory for you to explore.
Yeah, I did. I'll be honest, I did have a few, oh my gosh, what have I done moments? But then that comes out, I'm sitting in this incredible Emirate doing an amazing job. And so that wouldn't have come if I hadn't said yes to something that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm going to ask you one question that I also wanted to really ask you.
Okay.
When interviewing someone for your team, what are your top green and red flags?
So I think for me, red is tenure. If somebody has not just one or two, but several short tenures in their career, I'm talking a year and a half.
Yeah.
I think that is a bit of a red flag to me, that it's somebody who's not particularly committed to an organisation, or they bail when the times get tough. And there's always going to be tough times in a job. So for me, that's a little bit of a watch out. And it doesn't mean that I exclude people. It just means I need an explanation.
Yeah.
And then green for me is really around humbleness. I really like people who are who have humility in the way that they express themselves and their achievements. And I think that's important, because ego gets in the way of a lot of decisions. And I think somebody who's humble will maybe put that aside. Ego's good, don't get me wrong, but somebody who's going to make the best decision for the organisation or for the moment, rather than thinking about their ego, is likely to be somebody who's a bit more humble. So I think that's a really strong quality that I look for.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is definitely a very strong one. Also because in tourism, I think the work is very collaborative.
100%, yeah.
So it definitely makes sense.
We are a relationships-based industry, and we need to get along. So, having a bit of humility in your approach really does help.
No, I love that. All right, Phillipa, our time is almost up. But before we close, I want to ask you about your vision for the Emirate. Ras Al Khaimah is in a defining chapter. The Emirate is growing its tourism profile, expanding its hospitality offering, and building a destination story rooted in nature, culture, adventure, and long-term value. When the story of Ras Al Khaimah's transformation is told 20 years from now, what do you think will stand out as the decisive turning point, and how would you like your contribution to be remembered?
So I think the turning point has already happened.
Okay.
And I think it was, there's going to be many moments in the next 3 to 5 years that seem like really big moments. But the turning point was when leadership decided that they were going to double down on tourism, that tourism was going to be a big contributor to the GDP, and they set the plans in place for that. And so now we're seeing that start to roll out, and that's really exciting. And I guess in terms of my contribution, I'd love to be remembered for being part of bringing that vision to life, and from taking Ras Al Khaimah from being this beautiful regional gem that we have at the moment to be being a globally renowned part of the UAE's tourism story,
Yeah.
but also for being globally renowned for our nature, for our culture, for our adventure, but also for being responsible for redefining what luxury means in the UAE.
Yeah.
And that luxury being about a sense of place, about wellness, and about personal connection. So if I can play a small part in that, I'll be very, very happy indeed.
No, that's a very powerful note to end on. What I'll take away is that Ras Al Khaimah's tourism story is not about becoming like anywhere else. It is about recognizing what already makes it special. As you mentioned, the mountains, the coastline, the heritage, the adventure, and a pace of travel that feels deeply connected to place. It's a story of growing with confidence while staying true to yourself. Phillipa, thank you again for joining us. It's been a real pleasure having you on C-Suite Talks.
My pleasure. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks for joining us on C-Suite Talks, where we bring global and local insights from the heart of Ras Al Khaimah to the world.
Be sure to follow, share, and tune in next time for another 15-minute conversation about what it really takes to lead.